This week on my YouTube channel, I'm talking about all the best games that came out in 2015 and some of my own personal contenders for Game of the Year. I've already talked about The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Next up, a late contender, but a biggie, it's Fallout 4. Okay, it's a Fallout game, so let's get to the obvious stuff first. Fallout 4's world is huge, and it's full of interesting shit to do. The vastness of the world of Fallout 4 doesn't really come across until you're quite deep into the game, and I think that's because the start sort of stumbles a bit. They give you a little bit too much. You're already fighting Deathclaws and power armor within the first 90 minutes of the game, but after playing that game, after getting to Diamond City, after sort of pushing yourself out into the further reaches of the map, you start to realize that sort of empty spaces in between the distant spots are just full of shit to do. Buildings to explore, and side quests to explore, and character quests to explore, and all of the settlements to sort of get up and running. And there's a really good feeling of, you know, like in World of Warcraft, in games where you're not high level enough to sort of enter certain places, there's a really good feeling of progression and that your ability is allowing you to get into new places. And outside of this just sort of general, you know, the amount of stuff to do in Fallout 4, for a Fallout game, in terms of environments, it's incredibly diverse in a way that we're not really used to. There's lots of, you know, Fallout 3-esque deserted lands with like dead trees and stuff up in the north. Down the south there's massive irradiated areas. The city of Boston itself, it's not the only city in the game. Cambridge is there, and Lexington is there, and lots of other little sort of townships around the area of Massachusetts. So it never really feels like that sort of very similar drudgery that we're used to, the depressing starkness of games like Fallout 3 and New Vegas. And I think that can actually come across as a little bit jarring at the start. It sort of doesn't really feel like a Fallout game, but it finds its own sort of place within the series. I think once you've played for a couple of hours and you realize there are those stark areas, and then there also is more built up towns, which the older games desperately needed more of, I think it becomes a much more interesting place to explore. Fallout 4 also fixes one of the sort of core problems that have been with the series since it turned 3D, and that's that the shooting isn't total garbage anymore. You can easily engage in combat in Fallout 4 using aim down sights, and that's something you never really could do in Fallout 3 and New Vegas. In fact, so much of Fallout 3 New Vegas involved just, you know, holding onto as much AP as possible, and then sort of jumping around while your VAT's recharged in combat scenarios. And in fact, Fallout 4 does a great job of making you use aim down sights, because, you know, feral ghouls and mole rats and certain types of enemies actually attack in packs. So you're sort of forced to, you know, pop off a couple of shots here and there, or like dump some automatic rounds, or use pistols in a way you never did in the previous game, where you're sort of like taking shots and changing direction quite a lot. So in that way, Fallout 4 it's the best gunplay in the series by far. As ever, it's got great characters. It's got poor characters as well. I think Preston Garvey is a real fucking dour piece of shit, but when you get into Diamond City and you meet Nick Valentine and you meet some of the other tertiary characters, it has really good stories in there. In fact, when it comes to the main quest, though it might not end particularly, you know, incredibly, I think the main quest in this game, at least for the first 2/3 of it, is probably the best main quest, again, since the game's gone 3D. It's a massive driving force, and I actually found it hard to do side quests for some of the time because I wanted to know what was going to happen next. The base building in the game is going to be superfluous to a lot of people. I personally really enjoy it. I think it adds a sort of something to do in the game that isn't involved in shooting people, because you're basically constantly, as much as this game is a role-playing game, it's basically a shooter. There aren't many ways in which you can sort of, you know, get out of situations without using your gun. So I think Fallout needs something in downtime, and the settlements, the base building and the sort of the customization elements of it is a really fun sort of experience to explore within the game, and I certainly enjoy doing it in my downtime. The other thing it allows you to do actually is to set up a really good safe spot for weapons, for kit, for your power armor, for apparel, in a way that the old games again never had. Sometimes you'd find somewhere, you know, you could like get your little house and store stuff there, but it never really felt like yours. Whereas in Fallout 4, building your own house, putting your furniture where you want it. I've had a great time, you know, stacking all my Nuka-Cola in the kitchen, having my bobblehead stand and my magazines, and I think it really adds a sort of a sense of your character's a sense of place in Fallout 4 that I really don't think they had in the previous games. On the negative side, I've talked about some of them already. I've already mentioned that I think it is essentially a shooter, although it is a role-playing game, unlike games like The Witcher 3, which allow you to really do quite a lot to sort of get around certain scenarios, you know, not using combat. Eventually, everything turns into a firefight in Fallout 4. It doesn't run fantastically on consoles. I've played it on PlayStation 4, and it's fine. I think there's a marked difference of it being better on PC, which is a general thing, but then some folks have had way more stability problems on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. And then overall, its greatest asset is its greatest deficit, is that it's not really that different to Fallout 3 in New Vegas. It's a wonderful new world to explore. It's bigger than we've ever seen. It's more diverse than we've ever seen. It's got better shooting in it. It's got a really solid main quest. But at the end of the day, if you don't like Fallout 3 in New Vegas, you're not going to like Fallout 4. On the other hand, if you do like Fallout 3 in New Vegas like I do, then Fallout 4 is a pretty fantastic game. I've already dumped almost 100 hours into it in terms of the PlayStation 4 and PC builds, and I'm going to be playing it for weeks and months ahead. There's no denying it's one of the best games to come out in 2015, but is it the best one? Let me know what you think in the comment box below, and I'm going to have more of my contenders right here on youtube.com/Daniel Dwyer over the coming days.